Now, I'm really excited to introduce you to our next speaker. Priscilla Katerena is the creator of the Polynesian Exchange, which featured and shed light on Polynesian plus models and actresses, such as Tracy McNeil, Veronica Pomay, and of course, herself. Now, since the creation of the Polynesian Exchange, Priscilla has been able to bring forward the conversation of diversity in the fashion and film industry for Pacific Islanders. Now, she has walked the runway at FF Week, which is the Oscars of plus size fashion. She's been featured in magazines around the world and booked multiple national commercials and campaigns with companies like JCPenney, Drybar, and Ulta Beauty. Now, Priscilla is going to be joined in conversation with the amazing Noelle Johnson. Now, Noelle is a global DEI strategist and trainer with over a decade of experience working in operations across industries. And she's been recognized for her expertise on mentorship and sponsorship. Noelle has been featured in Forbes, Fast Company, NPR, and more. And I'm really excited to step back and enjoy this conversation. So Noelle and Priscilla, I'll turn the stage over to you. Take it away.
Thank you so much for this warm introduction, Meg. I really appreciate you. And I'm so excited to get into it here with Priscilla today. Priscilla, thank you so much for joining. I know that we have a little bit of time here, but I just want to dive into you. So we're so happy for you to be here. I was diving into your Instagram and was just shook, absolutely gorgeous. I'm excited about all the things that you're doing here. So I would just love to hear a little bit about your background. What was your career trajectory? And what are some things that you've learned along the way to get you where you are today?
Yes, well, thank you so much, Noelle. And it's an honor to be here with you as well as the Powerfly family. So what got me started, or what started my career as a model is I had a friend who was also a plus model. It wasn't even anything that I ever even thought about doing as far as modeling. And so what I would do is go to some of her photo shoots, and I would help her with her hair and makeup, and didn't even realize that that was an option for me. My main focus at the time was just working. And so after several times where I would go with her on set, it clicked in my mind that this is something that I wanted to pursue as a career. And shortly thereafter, I booked a photo shoot with Damien Photography, who was my first ever photographer. And so from the photos that he took of me, I submitted them, and I booked my first gig instantly with, it's an organization that is still here today, My Black is Beautiful. And so yes, so yes, it was way back then. So that kind of got me started, and I've been on the scene ever since.
I love it. And with that work that you've been doing, let's talk about some of the things that you have learned in your position. So what are some of the lessons that you feel that you've learned as you have been developing this career pathway that is untraditional and so rewarding? What are some things advice that you would give that you've learned?
Yeah, so some of the, for myself and for many of the models, oftentimes, we always see the glitz and the glamour. And just in anything when it comes to like entertainment or even anybody in any career path, it's not an overnight success. What I've learned is that in the years that I've been modeling is that sometimes you get wins, and sometimes you lose some. So my main, objective and goal is to share that it's not an overnight thing. You have to continue, you have to know who you are and continue on the path that you already that has already been set for you. And just, along the way, just continue to give God the glory and, continue to forge forward.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yes.
Especially that really being able to, be grateful for the wins, but understand that it doesn't always work out that way. Exactly. I'm really excited about what you're doing here with the Polynesian Exchange. For anybody who's not familiar, can you share a little bit about that story and what it is?
Yeah, so for my background, I am biracial. I'm Samoan and Black, and so I grew up on the islands of American Samoa, where I had a huge family. As most people know, Pacific Islanders have big families. So my grandmother, she had 10 kids, and so that was I was it was my first language. So it was my first love growing up on the islands. My grandmother and my grandfather, they raised me. And so with the Polynesian Exchange, what I wanted to bring to it is just an infusion of culture, what I learned when I was, growing up in the islands, and also an infusion of love from that I've received from my grandmother, from my aunties, and especially from my mom, being that Mother's Day was, Sunday. And also my absolute love for modeling. And so the Polynesian Exchange was just a name that I came up with. And I felt like I was able to pour my love into that. And so some of the models that were mentioned, Veronica and Tracy, who are still modeling now. Veronica, she is definitely modeling. And Tracy, I believe that she may still be modeling. And it's weird because I met Tracy, and come to find out we're actually related through marriage. And that's another thing with the Polynesian community. A lot of times you find out that you're extended relatives, but so with the Polynesian Exchange, I was able to just infuse like modeling and also incorporating culture by, I was introduced to Nancy Elizabeth Thompson, who's of Lyft, and she's still a seamstress, and she has her own designs. And so she created some custom pieces for us to bring to our photo shoot. And so that was shared in that way. That was just a love of fashion, a love of culture, a love of modeling, and it was all infused into the Polynesian Exchange.
I love that. And I love the amount of representation that you're able to do for that. So I would actually love to hear a little bit, like, what does representation mean to you, to be able to see faces that look like yours and bodies that are like yours? I know when I was looking at your Instagram, I saw, even though I'm not Polynesian, I'm not Asian, I just like loved that I could see some of myself in you. So can you share a little bit about your thoughts on representation?
Yeah, no, I definitely believe that it's important. So for myself, if I see, when I was younger, growing up in American Samoa, I didn't see that. The main thing that we would watch is like American television, and so you didn't really see any representation. But what I see now more than ever is that when I see, a Pacific Islander or an African American on the screen, I feel like it's not only a win for them, but it's also a win for me. And it's just, to come through all that we have and to see us succeeding. And that's what I feel like, that's what representation is for me, is to see that we've pressed through all the hardships, and that we've been able to live out our dreams.
I love that. It really feeds into what I wanted to ask you next. So how do you think that the experience of Pasifika people and Black and Indigenous people are interconnected with this intersectionality here?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's always a lot of talks of colonization. So what we have experienced here in America, and pretty much all over the world, is just a colonization. So for us here in America, we were, Africans. It was were brought here and we were colonized, or even in Africa, they were colonized. So it was just stripping them of their own culture, maybe even their language. And so with that, it created a barrier where we may not know who we are. And so what we have to do is just to fight for our identity and to represent ourselves truly. So that's what colonization has done. And just to share a little story, so American Samoa was colonized by America, and then we also have other islands that are Samoan, and one of them is it used to be called Western Samoa, but now it's called Samoa, but they're colonized by the English. And so what I've found there is that there is a lot of colorism that we still see today. That's part of, you know, a residue of colonization. And so I feel like that's something that we're always fighting for. And that's how it's all interconnected. Even the language that we speak, several things that come up. It's a reflection of colonization.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, colorism seems to exist in most communities when it comes to BIPOC communities. What are some ways that you think that people can push back against colorism where it shows up?
Yeah, so for me, my main thing, because when I was growing up, you know, as a kid, you don't really know, and so when I was growing up, my family, they would call me Meuli, which is in translation, it means black thing. So what myself and some of my other, you know, siblings that are here now in the States, what we've done is to just push back, even just correct the language. I think that that's one way to help. I mean, I know that it's not a huge thing, but I feel like it's still something when it comes to correcting the colorism, is to correcting the language, changing the mindsets of maybe those that grew up with you know, colonization, and that's the way that I feel like it's helpful, is just to push back, change the language, change the mindset.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think most of the representation that you're able to share, it's definitely another way to make people really see how important it is that we are looking at colorism and why it needs to go away. So thank you for those thoughts. And I do have some additional questions for you, but if you are in the audience and you have any questions, please feel free to go ahead and put that into the chat so I can make sure to ask our incredible guest here. Another initiative that you are working with is Empowering Pacific Islander Communities, or EPIC. So can you talk a little bit about what EPIC does and how do you work with them?
So EPIC, they're a nonprofit organization locally based here in Los Angeles. And what they do is they're an advocacy group for social justice for Pacific Islanders. They teach about leadership, they teach about social justice, and different initiatives in the community. One of the main things that they have been, you know, since COVID, they've been pushing for is to increase the number of vaccinations for the Pacific Islander community, because as we all know, you know, it's all about education. It's all about resources and getting that kind of specific information infused into the community. Some initiatives that they're currently working on is for the upcoming election, June 7th, here in California. They're pushing for, you know, to get voters out there. I know that in the Black community, that's still a huge thing now, you know, it's still a huge thing. And for us, at EPIC, that's what they're pushing more for, is to get out to vote. You know, we do have power in voting and choosing these initiatives that are being, you know, put into law, put into legislation. And so that's one of the ways that they're, you know, pushing for our Pacific Islander community to get out there to vote.
Thank you for sharing those initiatives there. If we wanted to get involved with what EPIC is doing, how can we get involved?
Yeah, so they could be found on epicpi.org. You can find them at their website. They're also on Instagram. They're also on, you know, you can find them on their website. And the other, I forgot to mention, I do apologize. I forgot to mention that I'm also involved in their Black Pacific Alliance, which is an organization, or kind of a group that they've put together and organized for people such as myself who are, you know, maybe mixed, and, you know, have experience growing up maybe in the islands and then coming to the United States, or vice versa, or, you know, elsewhere, but that are mixed. And so it's great to be in a group of people that have the same kind of experience that you have. And it's like a safe place. So they provide that for us as well.
That's so interesting. And I'm curious, like I just think that that's so important, because I'm thinking about the friction in between the Asian community and the Black community, and all these initiatives to try to improve that. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts regarding that with being somebody who is both Black and Pacific Islander.
Yeah. So, I mean, in regards to that, I do, promote peace. I don't promote violence at all and towards one race or the other. And it's always, I feel like it's something that always recycles itself in regards to one race pinned against another. And so I don't promote violence. I don't promote, Asian hate. I think that we should all love each other. And that's from growing up in the Pacific Islander community. That's what we've been taught, is to, respect each other, respect your elders, and to share love. And so for me, I don't promote that. I want to promote love and peace.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that. For anybody who's interested in taking a similar path to you, maybe they're really interested in fashion, they want to get into acting, and they're just nervous. Is there space for me here? What advice would you give somebody who's looking to start some of that work?
Yeah. So my best advice is that you be the space, you be that person, you be that representation for those young girls. For me, on my journey, when I started, this was in 2010, 2011. I didn't see many, Pacific Islander models, and now more and more, I'm starting to see a lot more of us in the industry. So in the beginning, you may not see that, but I recommend and I urge you to continue on that path. If that is something that you want to do, you could always be the first. So it's okay to be the first. And so I urge you to forge forward, because you never know who may be looking up to you.
I love that. It makes me think, we talk a lot about imposter syndrome here at Power to Fly, but I feel like in this industry specifically, it's not just an imposter syndrome, it's like a not enoughness. I'm wondering if you ever struggle with that, and regardless, like, what advice would you give to anybody that may be dealing with that in a space where you could feel criticized for being plus size or for not fitting into the perfect mold of what is deemed as acceptable to some communities?
Yeah. Well, being a plus size model, definitely there's still a long fight to get accepted, to be in mainstream. I still see it now. And so even back then, it was, hardly ever saw any models or any actresses that were plus size that were, on the lead for any campaigns, any, movies. But now more and more you start to see it. So my main thing is just to continue to press forward. With imposter syndrome, I know that is always something that's lurking in the background. But I say that if this is what you want, I feel like you should continue to forge forward and fight for what it is that you believe is already yours, because you're already putting in the work. So, I feel like with imposter syndrome, a lot of times we've already put in the work. We just may not see the results immediately. So that's why we feel like we're being imposters. But I feel like if you continue to put in the work, that eventually you will feel like that is you. For myself, even sometimes in my day-to-day, I sometimes I don't even feel like a model, but I've worked so hard to get to where I'm at, where, I can claim that I am a plus model. I can claim that I am an actress. And so I just feel like it's just, you have to forge forward. Don't let anybody tell you that you're not. That's the main thing. I think you have to believe it for yourself first, and then everybody else will believe it thereafter.
I am obsessed with this idea of, like, you put in the work, and sometimes we can have that imposter syndrome, but it's like really being patient and seeing what you put in, but like also taking a look at what I was able to accomplish during those times that I'm just feeling like I'm not enough in those moments. I love that.
Exactly. And I feel like, you know, with imposter syndrome, what happens is we continue to compare ourselves with other people. And I think that that's probably where the pressure comes in, is that we see, oh, well, I see this other person, you know, they're doing this and they're doing that. What am I doing? You know, we start questioning, what am I doing? And I feel like we have to go back and reflect on the work that we have done. There's so many instances where for myself, you know, as I stated, that there's many seasons where it's up and down. You may not always be winning. And that's something that we always have to consider. You may not always be winning, or you may not always be booking the jobs that you think that you should get. Or you see, and this is an instance, I was talking to one of my friends where maybe you've gone out for the gig, or you had a self-tape, and then, for that specific brand, and now you see the commercial. And so you're like, well, that could have been me. But you know, what my main thing is that you just have to keep at it. It's not an overnight success. It doesn't happen overnight. And many times people think that it does, but it doesn't. It does not.
And I've seen some really good questions here from the audience, and they really are tapping into what you were saying here, because I'm seeing some themes around confidence. So can you talk a little bit about building up your self-esteem and building up your confidence in this industry?
Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, obviously for myself, growing up, I was bullied. I was bullied. I remember they used to call me Godzilla. And I know. So
You're so creative with the way that you bully, I'm telling you.
I know, they used to call me Godzilla. And so I remember even just being on the island. I don't know, I just had this fight in me. And I remember that there was some boys that were trying to bully me on the island. And so they would call me names like cockroach or black roach or whatever. And so I remember like specifically that I was a tomboy growing up. So what I did was I took like a big, I don't, you know, this is not for adults. I'm just saying for kids. So if your kid is being bullied, I remember that I fought back. I fought back. And so I feel like I've always had that drive. And that, just the confidence to be better for myself. It did not happen overnight. I mean, sometimes even now, and I feel like it's never going to be 100%. You're not always going to be confident in who you are, but I feel like sometimes you have to reflect and just be grateful for where you are at now, because, you know, sometimes we could fall back. So the things that I do to remain confident is to, self-work, self-healing. Those are the main things. I feel like a lot of times we always and try to improve our self-confidence, but we try to find outside things to help us. But it's all inside. You have to do the work inside. You have to figure out who you are inside. You have to heal the inner child that's inside. You have to pray. I feel like you have to do the work inside in order for that to exude outwardly and to have that confidence.
Writing that down. Do that inner work, y'all. That really does make a big impact.
Yes.
It really does.
Yeah.
And another question here from the audience, I think that's a good one. Have there been any experiences in your career as you reflect back on it that has, drastically affected you in such a way that you needed to do a pivot, or that you needed to reflect upon for growth?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, there is, as the industry continues to change, and we see that with any industry, sometimes it just changes. And with modeling, that has changed drastically. I know for myself, I'm a very private person. I'm not always into, creating like content or creating, like reels or doing those specific things. And I think I saw that transition happening, I would say probably in 2017, 2018, where a lot of the jobs for models were given to either bloggers, and they were taking essentially those jobs that models would generally do. And so in that time period, I had to reconfigure my whole business model to, to either get with the program with social media, and just create more content and reach out to brands. Maybe brands are not reaching out to us anymore, but just reaching out to brands and, doing a deal saying, hey, I would love to work with your brand. I would create several different contents. And so I have experienced that definitely. And for me, it is a struggle in the beginning because it's like a learning curve. You have to learn how to redo things all over again. And so I have experienced that, but it's sometimes I did have to pivot, and sometimes you do have to pivot in order to stay with the times.
I love that. And just really making sure that we're being bold and that we're taking those risks. What's the worst thing that can happen when we reach out to a brand is that somebody says no. But on the other side of your experience as being somebody who is an activist in your own right, what advice would you give for somebody who's looking to maybe build their confidence there? Maybe they're always on the sidelines. They know that they want to get really active in the work that you're doing. How can somebody kind of get out of their shell and start being stronger activists?
Yeah. So I mean, my main recommendation is that sometimes you have to just put aside how you are seeing yourself at this very moment, and see yourself where you want to be. Sometimes it's about self-reflection. And so oftentimes, and it's not everybody is able to just move forward in what it is that they want to do. Sometimes they have to put themselves in there. They have to put themselves in those positions to get out of their shells. And so I feel like that's the main thing, is that sometimes we are our worst enemy, and that sometimes we, say for instance, anxiety or different things may overcome, or how we're feeling. And I feel like sometimes we just have to get out of ourselves and get into where it is that you see yourself and put yourself there. And even if it feels like you're about to throw up or you're about to feel sick, I feel like you just have to put yourself in there. And sometimes that's what it takes. It takes a lot of effort. I know, most people think that it's easy to be in front of the camera or go out there, and be an entrepreneur, be an advocate. No, sometimes it's not. It's sometimes even the people that do it on the daily, they may still have their struggles. So I feel like it's about self-reflection and seeing yourself where that position is that you want to be, and just putting yourself out there. And that's just what it is.
Absolutely. And, it makes me think of, and I really should put this on a t-shirt because I say it all the time, but there's no growth in comfort. So for people who are stepping into that work, just doing something that's a little bit outside of your comfort zone, know you're taking the right path. And like you said, there's so many different ways to show up in the way that's authentic to you, but you got to get a little uncomfortable to be able to Yes,
definitely.
So how can people find out more about you and all the work that you're doing?
Yes. So you can find me on my website, PriscillaKaterena.com. I'm also on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. So on Instagram, Priscilla Katerena, on Twitter, P Katerina. And then I also have Facebook, Priscilla Katerena. So that's where I could be found. I would love to connect with anybody else that, wants to talk about, joining forces and gaining more confidence. It's, it's something it's a work. It's definitely work.
Absolutely. And y'all, that Instagram is fire. I checked it out myself. Priscilla, thank you so much for joining us. This is a wonderful conversation. Just really appreciate your expertise in this area.
Thank you so much, Noelle. And thank you so much to Power to Fly. I really appreciate being here and sharing this experience with you all. Thank you so much, audience.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.